بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Continuing our discussion of change, tonight's lecture will be built around an event that ends our capacity to change. An event that when we come towards that time, we will no longer have the ability to evolve, grow, and develop. At that moment, all the growing or regressing that we've done, we're going to take with us to Yawm al-Qiyamah and into eternity forever. That moment is death. And the Quran perfectly describes, every soul shall taste of death. Here, when that death comes, that window and that opportunity to grow and evolve is gone. This world is the world of change. The hereafter is the world of punishment or the world of reward. And just to show you how scarce this life is, if 1,000 years here equals one day there. So imagine, we have this little time now, this present moment, this present day, and then our time is over. Whatever we've been able to reap in this time here, we will enjoy the benefits of it or the pain of it from now into eternity. So, tonight I will use death as a tool to help put things into perspective as to how much time we have to develop our growth, and death should motivate us to put energy towards our development. See, if we live long, we live to 70, 80. 80 compared to infinity. You have 80 years to affect your eternal life. It's a small world, it's a small window, and it's a small hope of opportunity. And death is so easily forgotten. Even though its effects are so monumentous and so long, eternity and infinity, it doesn't get longer than that. Even though its effects are so eternal, it is so easily dismissed, and it is so easily forgotten, and it is so easily put toward the side. When every single one of us here, from myself and everybody else, in this room and outside this markaz, into any masjid, onto the street, and anywhere in the world, maybe someone believes in God, maybe someone does not believe in God, but everyone knows they will die. And that is the end of every single human that has walked on this earth, and will continue to be the cause, and will continue to be the truth moving forward. And that's where the Prophet comes and says so perfectly and so beautifully, when it comes to us ignoring this very serious reality, the Prophet says, death is the closest thing to accompany the son of Adam, yet he deems it to be the furthest thing away. What a weaker creature is there? What a weaker creature is there? So we must recognize this reality and acknowledge and accept it. I have a friend. I was raised with this friend, and his brother, who I was all, when you're younger, so I'm 15, I was even younger, 12 years old. My friend is 12. So his brother, when he's 9, it's not like you're friends because you're 12, he's 9. But when you get into your 20s, I'm 30, he's 27, you become closer. So I have this friend of mine, and I've known him since I was a kid. He's Jewish, his mother's Jewish. His father's Assyrian Christian, from Turkey-Syrian border. They're Assyrian Christians. So I get a call this summer. He's my brother's friend. His name is, he's 24 years old. Good looking guy, young guy. He takes care of himself. I saw him not too long ago, and then out of nowhere I get a call. Oh, he's dead. Just like that, he didn't wake up. And I just know I was with him only 2 weeks ago. Young guy. And that is the reality of death. That is the reality of life. I saw him healthy, vibrant, young, beautiful looking man. And then, just like he's gone. And when we go to a funeral, and maybe many of us have been to a funeral, we don't necessarily cry because of the person that's dead. A lot of time we don't even know the person, we're just going out of respect. But we cry because we see ourselves dying. And we recognize that is our end. And then we imagine our mothers crying for us, we imagine our fathers crying for us, and it's that thought that puts you to tears. It's a selfish thought. It's a self-realization that I will be in that earth one day. And that's what brings us to tears. So what weaker creature is there than man? And right now we go outside, we can get into a car accident. In Lebanon, I don't know how, you know how many kids fall off a balcony? They go out to eat dinner, they died like that? Viruses, bacteria, motorcycles. Death comes. And there's no avoiding it. When it's your time, it's your time. So our window is short and our time is limited and we have to act. But a lot of times, especially when you're younger, you think it's impossible. I'm this and I'm that and nothing will happen to me. But the reality is, it will happen to every single one of us. So there's no reason to have this pride or this arrogance that we think, no, it won't happen, this or no. Salman al-Muhammadi, this close companion of Ahlul Bayt, where the Prophet says, call him Salman al-Muhammadi, not Salman al-Farisi, because of his closeness with Muhammad wa al-Muhammad. This companion, when asked to describe man, do you know what he says? To keep us humble, to know our reality and to recognize our end. Look what Salman says. Look how he describes man. Salman comes and says, man comes from a drop of semen and leaves as a rotten carcass, and in between he's nothing but a carrier of feces. That's all he is. That's all he carries in his intestines. He comes from semen, he leaves as a rotten carcass, and in between he's nothing but a carrier of feces. Yet we think and we imagine ourselves to be greater than death, and that it will not come, and that it will not reach us. But we'll have to be honest with ourselves and recognize this reality. And a lot of times our kibr, it's even shown to other communities. We think we're better than other people. In Canada, okay, right now we had an election, and Justin Trudeau won primarily on his platform of multiculturalism. On the topic of kibr, and we think we're better. Here in this country, it affected the politics of today, and it helped this minister, if not win more seats. And sometimes I get confused. I'm Lebanese, and I know here Khudr is Lebanese, and sometimes I ask myself, why do we think we're better than everybody else? Based on what? Where does this come from? We can't talk to this people, we're doing this, that. And there's no reason for it, because before Canada taught multiculturalism, Islam has taught it 1400 years ago. In that famous verse of the Quran which reads, O mankind, indeed we have created you from male and female, and made you of different peoples and tribes, and the best of one of you is the one who gets to know one another. This is a very famous verse of the Quran. Allah is saying, I've created you of male and female, and of different tribes, so you may come to know one another. The best of you are those with taqwa. It's a famous verse. But there's other verses that allude to the exact same thing. In chapter 22, surely those who believe and those who are Jews and Sabians and Christians and those who associate with Allah, surely Allah will decide between them on the day of resurrection. Surely Allah knows all things. It's not for me to think I'm better than anybody. Allah is saying, leave it for me. I will judge in between them. To further illustrate this point, to every nation, in chapter 22, to every nation we appointed acts of devotion. For example, the Jews with the Wailing Wall, the Christians with Lent. To every nation we have appointed acts of devotion which they observe. Therefore you should not dispute with them. Therefore they should not dispute with you. Most surely you are on the right way. And if they contend with you, say, Allah knows what you do. Allah will judge between you on the day of resurrection, respecting in that in which you differ. Allah is saying, I will decide between you, respecting in that which you differ. And the most clearest verse that supports multiculturalism and respect for everybody, chapter 30. This verse is so clear and so beautiful. It puts an end to this discussion altogether from 1400 years ago. Chapter 30, verse 22. And one of his signs is the heavens and the earths. Clear enough. What's another one of his signs? Allah continues. And the diversity of your tongues and colors. Most surely this is a sign for those who are learned. Look what Allah is saying. Of our signs is the heavens and the earth. And of our signs is the diversity of your tongues and the diversity of your colors. Surely this is a sign for the learned. That's why you find the most ignorant of people are the ones who make fun of other people. It is only the learned people that it can accept other people's skins and that can accept other people's colors. Clear verse in the Quran. And Amir al-Mu'mineen continues to say, the betterment of man lies in being different from one another, for they will perish if they were all equal. Is there a better platform to run on multiculturalism than this one hadith itself? The betterment of man lies in being different from each other. They will all perish if they were all equal. But nonetheless, at the same time, our Mawla who has that hadith comes and he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish 6 groups. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish 6 groups. The first group he'll punish, Arabs for racism. It's clear. The first group is Arabs for racism. And with all that said, we see how emphasized multiculturalism is in Islam. These principles that have existed with Islam 1400 years. And yet it's these countries that sometimes that promote them better than we do. And you know what's amazing about these countries? Like for example, women in Canada only had the right to vote in 1918. In Quebec, provincial elections in the 1940s. Aboriginal groups, native Indians to this country that we live on, they only had the right to vote in 1960. African Americans in the United States, they only gained their right to vote in 1965. And us, and even now, you could say they've advanced even further than us in the respect of others, even though we've had a head start. We've had a 1400 year head start upon anybody else when it comes to accepting others for who they are. You've had a 1400 year head start on anybody, and yet our actions leave a lot to be desired. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
I know I sidetracked, so going back to our topic of death. So, with such certainty of this reality, why is it easily ignored? How is it so easily ignored? Because a lot of us, it's our desires, it's our fancies, and we easily ignore it thinking it's not coming to us. I've mentioned this hadith and I'm going to mention it again because it fits perfectly with this lecture. Sometimes it's our desires that make us forget the seriousness of this day. And that's why Amir al-Mu'mineen sees Jabir Abdullah al-Ansari, and when he looks at Jabir, he sees Jabir doing this. He gives a huge sigh. So Amir al-Mu'mineen, upon seeing this, he says, "Oh Jabir, are you sighing? What are you sighing about? Is it about this dunya?" Jabir says, "Yes, it's about this dunya. I have a I'm worried about this dunya, about something." So Amir al-Mu'mineen goes to describe this world in a way in only which he can describe it. Only in a way, because our desires sometimes make us forget that. So let's see how the Amir answers this issue. He says, "O Jabir, know that the lights and pleasures of this dunya are 7 things. The greatest of drink is water." There's 7 things, sorry. Food, drink, clothing, the ones you marry, the animals you ride, the things you smell, and the things you hear. The Amir is saying these are the only 7 pleasures of this world. Now let me describe them to you. The most beautiful of food is honey, and it's nothing but the spit of an insect. The greatest of drink is water, and there is nothing more abundant than it on this earth. The greatest of clothes is silk, and it is the saliva of a worm. The greatest ones to marry, and the best thing sought in them is the worst aspect of them. The greatest animal to ride is the stallion, and it's nothing but a killer. The best thing to smell is musk, but it's the blood from the abdomen of a beast. And the best thing to hear is singing, and that is haram. Whatever is described like this does not deserve the sigh of a sane man. When the world is so we're sacrificing the akhirah and pushing death aside for desires that are described like this by the Amir. At that point, Jabir answers, by Allah, the dunya never crossed my mind again. So we ignore this death and we ignore this day and we sacrifice eternity or a higher status in the hereafter for a pleasure that's only enjoyed with pain. I'll give you an example. Every pleasure in this dunya is only experienced with pain. For example, you enjoy food, right? But you only enjoy food when it's preceded by hunger. First you have to feel the pain of hunger, and then you get the pleasure of that food, but that pleasure is followed by more pain when you overeat. That is the pleasure of this world. You want to enjoy your health? You only enjoy your health when you've tasted sickness. You only enjoy your wealth when you've tasted poverty. Every pleasure and every ni'mah that we experience, and it's only through pain that we come to understand its sweetness, and it's always followed by pain. For something as simple as you have a son, you love the son, and this pleasure the son gives you, he'll also give you pain. That is the experiences of this world, and that's how happiness is enjoyed. It is only in akhirah that you experience food and the pleasure of food without the pain of hunger. You get to enjoy the wealth without having to work. It is only in akhirah that you enjoy pleasures and desires without strife and without difficulty. Myself, I have a back, my back bothers me. When I was younger, I never worried about my back. But now that I got older and I heard, so now I appreciate having the ability to stand up only because I went through back pain. It's only when your back hurts and you're walking around bent like this and you can't sleep straight, only then will you appreciate having a back that's healthy. Otherwise, it's never a thought. You think it's normal. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
And that's why Imam al-Sajjad comes and says, how bad of a trade is it, the one who gives up his akhirah for this dunya? For the pleasure that's enjoyed here is so minimal and so fleeting and is only experienced through pain. And you sacrifice akhirah for that? I remember when I was younger, I had to drive my mother to work or something early in the morning. And I was in university. And it was early in the morning. And waking up for Fajr has never been easy. It's never been easy. But then when I had to wake up and I was on the road, it was like 6 in the morning, winter, cold, cars everywhere. People had to get dressed. People had to make breakfast. People had to make lunch. If they had children, they had to prepare their lunch. Then they had to drive to work. And then they had to be at work for 8 hours. And maybe that day they made $100 or $1,000. But they had to wake up at 5:30. And then I asked myself, as I was driving, like, all these people are up, yet I have a hard time waking up for Salat al-Fajr. Allah tells me, Hussain, wake up, do wudu, 2 rak'ahs, 2 minutes, go back to sleep, I give you Jannah. Whereas, and it's hard for me to do that. But then all these people has his boss. His boss tells him, I need you to wake up, I need you to get ready, I need you to get to work, I need you to drive, I need you to sit here 8 hours, and then I'll give you $500. And they listen. Allah's not asking me to wake up, make breakfast, eat, get dressed, drive, sit in the masjid 8 hours. He's not asking for any of that. And he's saying, I'll give you akhirah, just pray 2 rak'ahs and go back to bed. How bad of a trade is it? Allah's asking for so little and it's so hard. Yet if it was my boss asking, there would be no problem. I had this other job, working flooring, hard job. Especially if you're the helper. It's like $10 an hour. And it feels like slavery. It's hard. And I used to work with these other guys. When Salat al-Dhuhr would come, I'd be happy. Because alhamdulillah, I get to take a break from working. It was hard. I'll tell them, come pray with me. They're like, no. I'm like, this guy's giving us $10 an hour. And you're worried he's going to get mad at you. Allah's giving us Jannah for 5 minutes. Just No, we can't do it. We can't do it. We have to go. He's going to get mad. He's worried. I was like, subhanAllah. They're more fearful for that $10. Literally, they're getting a bit more, $12. Okay, I just started. I quit quick. It was too hard. Because it's not worth it. To me, like, and so I tell them, come pray. They say, no, we're worried about our boss. I'm like, they're Muslimin. Allah's giving you Jannah. No, we can't do this right now. He's giving me $10 an hour. How bad of a trade is it? The one who gives up his akhirah for this dunya. Sallu ala Muhammad wa al Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So, if our sins are stealing, backbiting, lying, disobeying parents, taking inappropriate substances, being disrespectful, cursing, if our sin is whatever it may be, know that is not worth your akhirah. And the reason we commit these sins is because our desire controls us. Whereas we should be in complete control of our desire. Nothing should be able to control me. I should be in control of everything else, including my emotions and my desires. Even my emotions. If I'm in a situation and someone is fighting with me, no one should have the ability to control my emotions. Nobody. If I'm in a fight and a person's yelling at me and I stay quiet because I'm so mad I can't speak, that means that person is causing that reaction out of me to stay quiet. Or if I yell out right away, that person caused me to yell right away. Whereas, if I have the ability to control myself, because he can't play with my emotions, I tell myself, okay, I'm gonna stay quiet because it will diffuse the situation and we can solve the issue. That's completely different than staying quiet because you're mad and don't know what to do. Or if you say something bad, you don't do it emotionally. You listen to what he said, you absorbed it, you said, okay, this is the appropriate response, is anger, and then you be angry towards him, but you weren't angry because he showed you anger. You were angry because you logically decided, now I need to be angry. It wasn't reactionary. It was done purposely. No one should be able to control your emotions and your heart. You should be the king of your heart and the master of your desires and your emotions. You get the point that I'm saying? So, no one should be able to get a response out of you. No, you give the person the response you want, according to how you want it. So on this issue of desire and why we sacrifice our akhirah for it, the Prophet comes and says, remember the destroyer of pleasures. When asked what it was, he said death. It's very simple. And Amir al-Mu'mineen comes and says it so beautifully, the one who's a slave to his desire is more slavish than an actual slave. The one who's a slave to his desire is more slavish. Always just running after his shahwa. Always just running after what he wants, his desires, his needs, his this, his that. Therefore he's become a slave to those things. He's not the master of anything. And when it comes to staying away from things, everyone must understand, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this is haram, it's not because it's just haram, as simple as that. No. Allah says in the Quran in chapter 7, my Lord has only prohibited indecencies, those of them that are apparent as well as those of them that are hidden. When Allah makes something haram, it's not because it's just for fun. He knows what's good for us and He knows what's bad for us. So we must trust Him and trust His infinite knowledge before we give way to our desire. It's the same way as a child. He doesn't know why he brushes his teeth. The parent tells him to brush his teeth because the parent has knowledge of the benefits of brushing the teeth. And that is how, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this is haram, let's say it's gelatin, don't say, oh, it's small. No. Recognize that Allah knows me better than I know myself. He knows what's good for me more than I know what's good for myself. So that's why I listen to Him. And it's not a matter, oh, it's just a small thing. Or it's just haram, it's haram. It's not a matter of it's haram. It's a matter of when you tell Allah, when you know something is haram and you do it, you're telling Allah, no thank you. I know what's good for me, you don't know. Therefore you're competing with Allah. It's not a matter, oh, I just made a sin. It's not a sin. It's a matter of your position. The position you're taking. You're telling Allah, I recognize you think that, but I think it's not a big deal. It's not an issue. That's the issue when you commit a sin. You're telling Allah, I'm indifferent to you. No, thank you. I don't need your advice. And when we think like that, that distance us from Allah, and that's what's dangerous, is that distance. And that's why Amir al-Mu'mineen says the sin which you view small is the biggest of sins. Is because it's the thought process behind that sin. Oh, it's not a big deal. That means you're telling Allah, oh, you're not a big deal. And your opinion is not a big deal. And your shara is not a big deal. I know more than you. That's what we tell him. And I'll give a clear example. We have fathers. If your father tells me, go get me a cup of water, would any of us dare say no? A'udhu billah, never. Even though it's a small thing. Just getting him water. But because of your closeness with your father, your respect for your father, you would never deny him a cup of water. It's not the size of the sin, but it's the position. That's why you always get him that water. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And to help us understand death, who better to explain death than the taker of death? The angel of death, Israel. How many lives have existed on this earth? How many deaths has the angel Israel seen? Now look at the way he describes death and the way he fears death. So how are we so indifferent of it? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will even make the angel of death, Israel, taste death. So when his soul is taken out, the angel of death will say, by your honor do I swear that had I known the taste of death to be like this, I would never have taken anyone's soul. And that's what he's saying. After all the deaths that he's witnessed, in war, in violence, in killings, he says, after I tasted it, had I known for it to be like this, I would have never done it to anybody. That's the seriousness of it. And, you know, there's a beautiful, I don't want to get into it, a beautiful lecture by Amir al-Mu'mineen on this topic. He has a sermon, if anyone ever wants to YouTube it. It's a sermon where he doesn't use the letter alif. And in this sermon, there's a group of Arabs sitting, and they're all talking about the most used letter in the Arabic language is alif. So here at this point, the Amir gets up, gives a 10-minute lecture on Aqidah, Tawheed, Nabuwa, Qiyamah, Fada'il of Rasulullah, praises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He talks about qabr, he talks about death, he talks about the hereafter, all without using the letter alif. Each one of those topics is so difficult to discuss using any letter. Each one of those topics, and the thing is, he does it without sacrificing his beauty of speech and without sacrificing his eloquence. It's not like it's just done. It's still beautiful to hear. You're like, how was he able to describe death so intimately, so personally, without using alif? Or praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without using alif. And when describing death, the Amir comes and says, paraphrasing, when you go to that grave, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And he comes and he describes death, when you'll be mourned by your wife, and his grave is dug, his children are now orphans, those who are around him are now dispersed from him. And then what he had built up is taken in the will for those that he has given it to. He's stripped of his clothes, he's bathed, he's in the nude. Then he's directed towards the Qibla. Something has been spread on the floor for him, and it's his shroud. He is now shrouded, his head is wrapped, his body is wrapped, and then he's heading towards his burial. And then he enters that grave, and then dust is thrown on him. This is our end. This is our abode. Abu Dhar says it beautifully. Paraphrasing, if I remember the hadith correctly, he says something along the lines, we fight for land and property and etc. But in the end, all that we own is 6 by 6. That's it. That's the end of us. And yet the shuhada of Karbala were those who left this world even without that 6 by 6 grave, and were those who left without a coffin on that day. And that blessed holy body of Ali Akbar, the warrior of Imam Hussain, who most resembled Rasulullah in looks and speech and manners, his body lied on that ground with no kafan on the 10th of Muharram. And to help understand the beauty of Rasulullah, when we say Ali Akbar, most resembled the Prophet in looks, speech and manners. To help understand what those looks, speech and manners are, let's go back to Nabi Yusuf and the story of Zulaykha. Look at the story. Look at how we can understand the beauty of Ali Akbar here. Nabi Yusuf goes towards Zulaykha and says, "Oh Zulaykha, what prompted you to do so?" She replied, "The beauty of your face." We all know Zulaykha went towards Nabi Yusuf to fulfill her desires. So Nabi Yusuf is asking, "What made you do this?" She says, "It was the beauty of your face." Here Nabi Yusuf says, "So what will you do if you see the last prophet whose name is Muhammad and he is more beautiful looks, more good-tempered speech, and more generous than I am?" Generosity is manners. You know what she says? She says, "You're right, I would do even more." Yusuf said, How do you know that you will do more?" She says, "As soon as you mentioned his name, his love was placed in my heart." Here God says, since she loves Muhammad, I love her. He gives her back her youth and he orders Yusuf to marry Zulaykha. Just on hearing the name. And Nabi Yusuf says imagine, she just heard that name. By hearing that name, Nabi Yusuf, who owns half the world's beauty, she forgot Nabi Yusuf. And she says, Muhammad's love has now entered this heart. And Nabi Yusuf says his manners are better, he's more well-tempered, and he's more generous. So when we say Ali Akbar resembles Rasulullah, imagine how beautiful he is. In temper, in manners, in speech, and in looks. And on the plain of Karbala, the first shaheed of Bani Hashim was Imam Hussein's son, and his oldest son was Ali Akbar. He was the only one given permission to fight right away. For how could Abu Abdullah send the sons of Zainab and sends the sons of Hassan to die and claim Shahada while his own sons are alive? So before Akbar charges the field, Imam Hussain looks at Akbar and says, "I wish you had become a father, and then you would have known what I'm experiencing at this moment." Imagine sending that beautiful image of Rasulullah into that battlefield. And then Akbar entered the battlefield, and Hussain, as he puts his head down and his eyes begin to tear, he says, "My God, witness that I have sent a young man to the battle, who the infidels are going to fight, who looks like the Prophet, his speech is like the Prophet, and his manners most resemble the Prophet. And whenever I wanted to look at Rasulullah, I would look at my son Akbar." The older soldiers in Yazid's army, seeing Akbar charge the battlefield, they thought Rasulullah has descended from the heavens because of how much he looked like him. And they thought Rasulullah had descended from the heavens and was going to tell them, "Do not kill Hussain." After some time, and as Ali Akbar charged into the battlefield, he comes back towards Abu Abdullah and he says, "The thirst is killing me, and this armor is heavy, and it's bothering me. Is there any water to refresh me and give me energy to go back into the battlefield?" The Imam replied, "Oh my son, fight a bit more. Very soon you shall behold your grandfather Muhammad. You shall drink from his flowing cup, and you shall never be thirsty again." And then he charged back into the battle, and he went through 100 soldiers. Here a man calls out, "I accept all the sins of all the Arabs." And then a man hurled a spear into the chest of Ali Akbar. And when he fell to the ground, it was like Muhammad fell to the ground. And at this point, they all surrounded his body and they started cutting Ali Akbar pieces by pieces by pieces. It was like Muhammad himself was being cut into pieces. And at this point, Abu Abdullah charges the field. Ali Akbar cries out, "Ya Abata, oh my father." And then he says, "The apostle has quenched my thirst and is expecting you." Here Imam Hussain begins to cry in a way that he hasn't cried before, and he continues to wipe the blood off the face of Ali Akbar. He wipes the blood off the teeth of Ali Akbar. Sayyidah Zainab charges that battlefield. She throws her body on the chest of Ali Akbar as she continues to cry. She says, "How does this happen while my sons Muhammad and Aoun are still alive?" Imam Hussain takes Zainab back to that camp. He sits by the body of his son. He sees his son's hand is sitting over his chest. So he moves that hand and he sees there's a spear inside. Here he takes his son Ali Akbar, the poets say, he points him towards Najaf. And he says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, oh my father, you are the ones that lifted the door of Khaybar. But have you ever have to lift the spear from your son's heart? Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be of those who meet death with patience. Allow us to be of those who meet death when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with us. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be of ibaduhu salihin, the habba of Muhammad wa al Muhammad, the shi'as of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the muntadhireen of Imam Sahib Yuqsi wa Zaman. Sallu ala Muhammad wa al Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.